Hi, I'm Colleen Taylor with TechCrunch TV. Here with us today is Chance Barnett, the founder and CEO of Crowdfunder.com. He's going to talk to us about the bill that just passed in the US Senate today, the Crowdfund Act. Hi, Chance. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, good. So can you just tell us about what the Crowdfund Act is and what this means for the technology industry?
Absolutely. The Crowdfund Act is really exciting for the technology industry and for startup founders in particular. For the first time, they're going to, in the near future, be able to make a more public offering in order to raise funding for their company. Whereas in the past, they were restricted to only trying to one at a time go out and contact accredited investors and pitch them one at a time and try and raise money. So not only does it allow the startup founder for the first time to have access to a much broader pool of potential investors, but it also allows everyday people, everyday Americans who aren't part of the wealthier 1%, who aren't accredited investors, for the first time to have access to investing in companies that they believe in or they think are really promising. And that's really exciting. If there's a company that you believe in, maybe you're a user of, and you know there's going to be explosive growth, what if instead of that company getting funding from the big institutions that get in on all the deals because they have exclusive access, what if you can be someone to fund that company and experience, the real upside growth of when that company goes from a small early stage startup to a much more mature company, you can ride along with them and benefit. So participating in the wealth cycle is one of the things that everyday people will get to do because of what's happened in this bill.
And I think a lot of people would ask, we've already been doing this. What about Kickstarter and IndieGoGo? How did they do this already?
Great question. So currently in the crowdfunding space, there's what's called the donation model. And Kickstarter is a great example of an amazing success story in the donation model. And we're really happy that Kickstarter's paved the way for what we're going to be doing now. Kickstarter allows people to donate to a company generally in much smaller increments is what people do. So the average investment amount, I think, is around $25. People give, between a few tens of dollars to maybe 100 plus dollars on Kickstarter. And they aren't allowed to become an owner in any way in a company. They're just participating in the company in a certain way. They might receive small rewards or credit or prizes for having donated, but they're not allowed to become an owner in any of the companies.
I
What
see.
we're doing and what's unique is that we're allowing people to put their money up and actually become an investor and an owner in a company.
Okay, great. And I understand I saw an interview with you yesterday, I believe it was on Business Insider, and you said you didn't think that this was going to pass today. You were not optimistic about this. Why not? And how did you feel today when it did pass?
Well, to me, that headline was misleading in order to get attention.
No.
It said too much. What I really believed, there's a lot of nuances in the legislative process, and to not go into too much technical detail, there were actually two crowdfunding bills in consideration in the Senate yesterday. There was one, which is an existing bill for crowdfunding that the House had passed, and then there was a separate bill that had been written and amended by key members in the Senate who we've actually worked with. And that bill provided for more protections and more regulation that would help protect investors who are investing in companies via crowdfunding.
I see. And can you tell me then just basically your story with Crowdfunder? Because I know this has kind of now been waiting in the wings. You haven't been able to actually turn on your company until something like this passed.
Sure. Well, it really starts for me about 2 years ago when I switched in my career, in some sense, going from someone who was always a very hands-on entrepreneur, spending most of my time building my own companies, to spending more time with very early stage entrepreneurs, helping them to grow their company. And inevitably, at some point when you're working with an early stage founder, the challenge of how to have capital, how to raise capital, what that process looks like comes up. And that's a really significant hurdle for most companies. And rightly so oftentimes. You need to go through that challenge. You need to be challenged to get traction in a way that you might think of as a lean startup, and really move towards figuring out what you're going to do before you raise a ton of money and try and go out to the market and spend a bunch of money. And I really believe in that philosophy of being a lean company and not just trying to raise money to figure out what your problems are, but really trying to solve some of those problems. So to make a long story short, over the last 2 years, I've been advising early stage startups, and I saw this process over and over of the challenges that everyone faces trying to organize for themselves this pitching process and how inefficient it is to try and go out and pitch 50 to 100 private investors, whether they're angels or VCs. What I believe the promise of crowdfunding is, and really the reason I built it, is because I love entrepreneurs and I love ideas and I love helping bring those things to fruition. And so that's really the impetus for Crowdfunder. For me, was more on the entrepreneur side. How do I help the entrepreneur? But not only with money, because money is one of the resources that matter, but I think money is actually one of the lowest value resources, because you're really just using money to trade for something else that you want, that you're hoping gets you results. So, not only do we want to foster a great environment that helps people raise money, but we want to connect them to the things that will actually make them successful. And oftentimes, as you see with some of the network effects that you have with Kickstarter, not only are you getting money to fund your company, but you're also getting evangelists, you're getting fans, and you're probably getting customers and users. And so that's one of the things we're really excited about fostering with what we're doing at Crowdfunder.
Great, but to be fair, the initial restrictions were in place, as you said earlier, to protect investors and to protect regular people. How do you at Crowdfunder protect the investors, and in addition to what's happening at the government level? I'm sure that you mentioned that there are things in place in the Act to protect investors too.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So aside from the securities law that's being established with the passing of this bill, and some of the things that are going to happen additionally in order to ensure investor safety, the things that we're going to be doing that we think are important and are part of our product are really helping people have a sense of transparency about identity on our platform. So when you join Crowdfunder, you're asked to connect your key social profiles, most notably your LinkedIn profile, which imports your work experience, and your Facebook and your Twitter accounts as well. And so that's really important. Let's say you were looking to invest in a company and there was a founder there. We tie the founder's profile to the company so that you can evaluate him and you can, or her, and you can evaluate the other team members. And you'll see their actual social profiles, who their existing relationships were, what companies they've worked at. So I believe that identity and more transparency around that for the investor is one of the great signals to helping them have a bit more sense of safety and confidence in their investment. And then another signal I think is really important that helps someone determine what might be a better bet or investment is that we have a social model within our platform. So you can follow a founder and you can also follow a company. So, I rarely believe that someone will go on our site, take one look and make an impulse decision to invest in a company. What's much more likely to happen in the environment we're fostering is that people spend time building real relationships. They get to know who our founder is. They stay up to date with the company's updates, and then they make an informed decision based on some history that they've had and communication they might have had with that company.
Great. And when you start talking this way, I start thinking of angel lists. Now, do you think Crowdfunder and sites that will emerge like it can be complementary to angel lists and the traditional VC model, or do you think it's destined to disrupt it?
I see this as very complementary. There are a few angels. I talk to a lot of angels in the marketplace, and the majority of them, I think, are excited about crowdfunding, but their experience generally is raising money is complex and expensive and hard. And I think that's one of the things we want to make simpler for a founder and for potential investors. But what I see as the opportunity is not disruptive of angel investors. It's actually an interesting way that can be complementary to portfolio companies for them. So let me give you an example of what I think is a common scenario. Right now, there's a really great community of accelerators, especially here in Los Angeles, where we're at. And a company goes into an accelerator and they might be accepted and get a small amount of investment. Let's say it's $50,000 for a fixed amount of equity in their company. They have great mentorship happening, and part of that mentorship is to help them get to the next phase of fundraising, ideally getting a lot of traction along the way. But when someone comes out of an accelerator, I think the promise is that raising a Series A round, your next round of funding, should be easy. And I think if you talk to anyone who's been in an accelerator or who's currently in one, they're not really made. It's a challenge to go out and raise that next round, even if you have some angel connections. And the angel community just doesn't come to you. What we think is one of the markets and opportunities that we will be of real value is providing that capital that's a bridge between I'm a company, I've gotten started, I have a real product, I have users, I have revenue, and I have customers, but I don't have the buy-in yet of this more institutional community. So how do I get from here to there over a 6-month period, a 12-month period, and get a lot more results for my company, and not spend the 6 months it might take me to get 1 or 2 yeses after pitching 100 angels. And I think if we can structure these deals right and help provide some general guidance to what we think are good terms for people to raise money, then we can leave a company in a great state for angels to come in and add a lot of value. So we really want to be a complement to the angels who want to add value and take a company to the next level.
Great. And now the Crowdfund Act has passed. You know, there's bills in the Senate and the House that have passed, but it's not all systems go right now. How long will it be before Crowdfunder.com is actually in business and up and running, and what's the timeline here?
Well, you know, there's 2 things that you don't want to see how they're made, and those are laws and sausages. So while I have a sense of confidence about the legislative process, there can be complications. For example, as we've seen with the few days that it took additionally for there to be a vote on the Senate crowdfunding bill. What I believe is the path to crowdfunding actually becoming law is as follows. Right now, the bill that the Senate voted on was an amended crowdfunding bill to what the House had already passed. So what's required is that this bill goes back to the House and that it passes there because it's different. And that is likely to happen next week. In fact, Eric Cantor, the leader on the Republican side, has already said that he wants to schedule a vote for next week. So that's going to happen quickly, which is great news. Once the House passes this new crowdfunding bill that was amended by the Senate, the thing that remains then is for it to go to the president's desk, and Obama's already committed to signing a crowdfunding bill, so we feel very confident that he will do that in a timely manner. And then there's really one more step, which is actually a big regulatory hurdle, which is the SEC is going to spend time with the language and the framework that's been provided in the Senate amended crowdfunding bill. And we were actually part of the process contributing some of the ideas with Senator Merkley's office, who was one of the key sponsors of this bill. So the SEC is going to take a look at this bill, and they've been given a general timeline of 180 days to spend with the bill to work out the regulatory framework about how people will actually need to behave and the role of the crowdfunding platform in this investment environment. And so what's really important there, and what we're doing in the crowdfunding world with a few other people who we think are going to be the key players in this industry, including us, is creating a regulatory body that will help us be proactive and say, this is how we want crowdfunding to work. And so we want to work really closely with the SEC to make sure that we're working step in step to provide necessary investor protections and make sure this is a really safe environment, both for founders to raise money and for people to feel comfortable investing.
Great. So today was a great day, but we're not at the end of the road yet, it sounds like.
Exactly. Thanks for shortening my long diatribe.
No, it's helpful. It's very interesting. So, Chance Barnett, thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us about this, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you soon.
Great. Thank you.